Third hour, Clay and Buck kicks off now. Thanks for being with us, everybody, all across the country. Senator Rand Paul was up on Capitol Hill during the biggest news story, really, of certainly the day on the domestic front, which is the Secret Service hearing. Senator Paul was there. He was asking questions, and he is fresh off the floor and joining us now. Senator Rand Paul, always a pleasure to have you, sir. Thanks for making the time for us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Yeah, we had quite the hearing.
Yeah.
We were combined Judiciary and Homeland Security to probably 25, 30 senators, and we had the new head of the Secret Service.
You were there. We were doing the show during it, so we were pulling it on the fly, the cuts and clips and quotes as we could. We wanted to just let you tell everybody, Senator Paul, your biggest takeaways as somebody who's been in this game a long time and knows what to expect. What were the most important things?
Well, if you compare the new director to the old director, there's night and day difference. She wouldn't answer questions. She came only to obstruct the truth, and she was an awful administrator and should have never been in the job, and I think was a political hire. This guy seems to have been in the Secret Service for quite a while. He seems like a straight shooter. He said there will be disciplinary hearings. He's not saying who's going to be fired or will they be fired, but he's at least saying there are going to be disciplinary hearings. He said in his opening and in my questioning that it was not defensible. It was indefensible to leave that rooftop open and not have snipers on that. He says he's changed the policy. They don't get a choice now. There will be Secret Service snipers on any building. One of the things that didn't come out in the hearing, but it comes out when you see some of the photographs of this, the Washington County, which is a neighboring county to Butler County, had a sniper team there for the local police. They were 300 yards away on the other side, and this hasn't been mentioned much, but they stationed snipers 300 yards away from the stage, but then failed to station snipers 100 yards away. So, I mean, just it was completely ineptitude, but it's also when your job is to protect lives. If you fail that job, it means you can't get it again. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. You made a terrible error, but it means you don't have the competence to be in that position. And so I said, you know, the world wants to know there'll be accountability, but the world also wants to know that these people aren't going to be at the next Trump rally guarding him and that they're not going to be in charge of the Democrat National Convention. And he kind of said they weren't, but then he kind of said, well, we can't really talk about who they are because they're still out there working. And it's like, well, maybe they need to be at a desk job for a while till we figured out, you know, how they could have left that roof open and how they let a suspicious person go 90 minutes. The guy's flying drones at 3:51 in the afternoon. He's cited at least a half a dozen times. They take pictures of him all over the place. He's walking around with a backpack in it with an AR-15 that he unfolds on the roof after running across 4 roofs, being spotted by the crowd, and still nobody warns the president to leave the stage. Completely, to my mind, indefensible.
We're talking to Senator Rand Paul. When I hear these guys testify, whether it's the Kim Cheadle who was fired or the new acting director, what I really want to hear, to the details you just gave, are from, let's say, the sniper who took out this shooter in the Secret Service. Will we hear testimony from actual Secret Service agents on the ground that day, as opposed to kind of an elaborate game of telephone, which is the director testifying as to what someone told him, as opposed to hearing directly from the people on the ground that day?
We have a bipartisan note insisting on that. So Chairman Peters is a Democrat from Michigan. I'm the ranking Republican on Homeland Security. The letter's been signed by the two of us, plus another Republican and another Democrat, insisting on individual interviews from the Secret Service. Now, he said in his hearing it's going to happen, but we don't want it to happen in 6 months or 6 years. We want it done. We gave him till August 9th. Now, they have not officially responded to that, but he acts like it's going to happen. But what gives me some misgivings is the Secret Service is investigating this, you know, for possible disciplinary action. They have not interviewed any of the local police. So it's a couple weeks now, and they have not interviewed any local police. Our congressional staff went last weekend. 4 different Senate offices went to Butler County, and we interviewed the local police officers. So, and we're not even, you know, we're the oversight for the public, but we're not the disciplinary committee. We're not the Secret Service, and they haven't interviewed anybody from the local police. It also concerns me that there's a little bit of pointing fingers from the new director saying, oh, well, the Secret Service assigned that to the local police. Well, we've interviewed the local police, and they say they brought up the strategic problem of leaving the roof unattended, and the Secret Service says, we've got this, you do what you're told. And they never told them to be on the roof. So there's a little bit of he said, she said. But in the end, though, it doesn't really matter. Who's in charge? If you are if you are the CEO of this battlefield, if you're in charge of safety for Butler County, you can't do this again. You failed in your job because you left a roof unattended with a direct line of sight, and you didn't stop the proceedings when you had a suspicious person reported upon by multiple officers for 90 minutes. How could you not have an all-points bulletin with people rushing around and getting that kid? If they'd have gotten him, he was on the roof at 6:06. He's rushing and running across 4 roofs to get to his shooting position. All you had to do is get him anytime between 4:15 when you spot him and 6:06 when he gets on the roof, and stop him because his backpack has an AR-15 in it. He's going to be stopped, and it's going to be foiled, and one man wouldn't have lost his life, and Donald Trump wouldn't have almost been killed. So it's a tragic comedy of errors, but really malfeasance. And look, it doesn't mean the person's a bad person. They probably feel upset that they missed this too, but it's such a profound judgment error that you can't do this again. And you just preclude yourself from that kind of responsibility for a job ever again.
So I'm glad to hear that you guys have requested and potentially are going to be able to talk to the guys that were actually on the ground that day. Would that be a public hearing? Would that be a closed hearing? What would that look like for those of us out here who want to get the full story of the failures that day?
I can understand not wanting to put them up because there is a little bit of political grandstanding where people are yelling back and forth at each other. I do think the officers deserve more respect than that. And so I think it should be transcribed, and we should do first private interviews that will be part of a public record. And I think that saves them sort of, so for example, the person in charge, we have the names. They're not making the names public, but we've asked for 10 specific individuals to be interviewed. We've already interviewed the local police ourselves. We've been there. But those 10 people, I think they should get to be interviewed without people yelling and screaming at them, and hear their stories, compare their different stories, because there's probably going to be different stories. The local police are going to say one thing. I think Secret Service is probably going to say another thing. But then there are some things that really, they're saying, oh, well, at 6:08 when people see him on the roof, they never told the Secret Service until right before the shots were fired. And it's like, well, they say, oh, their broadcast walkie-talkies don't communicate with ours. And it's like, what kind of world do we live in? You could go out in a Best Buy and buy 200 walkie-talkies on the same frequency that broadcast out loud and say, hey, why don't you all carry them for today, and then we'll take them next week when Trump's in Las Vegas, and somebody else will. It's not rocket science to figure out how everybody could be on one channel simply by giving everybody an extra device that communicates with the local broadcast. But the local police chief or whoever's in charge of the security from the local position is supposed to be standing next to the Secret Service commander in a command post. So when they hear the broadcast that his officers are searching frantically and have seen somebody on a roof, the second someone said there's a guy on a roof, that's at 6:08. You have 3.5 minutes till the shooting starts. So you have 3 minutes, which doesn't sound like a long time, but that's plenty long enough for a broadcast message to get out to have taken Trump off the stage. And it may be, if he's just motivated to kill Trump, that he doesn't fire the shots and kill the other people either. Kill the local fire chief if Trump were taken down. So, yeah, it's inexcusable. 3 minutes is a long time. But at the same time, you don't want to denigrate the officers. I mean, the marksman, the sniper that took the shooter out, did it with one quick shot within 15 seconds of the shots being fired. But really, that's why you have security, those to try to make sure that's done before he gets a shot off.
We're speaking to Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator Paul, are there any unanswered questions in your mind when it comes to the shooter? We know the motivation was to kill Donald Trump, obviously, so people talk about motivation. But in terms of whether he had any assistants, whether there were any other actors that played any role in this whatsoever, anything about training, anything about social media, are there further unanswered questions that you're looking into on that score? Or do you think that now with the access you have what you need to know?
since it's an absence of knowledge on the social media right now, so it's not that they haven't found much. That doesn't mean they won't find anything, and I think the FBI is still pursuing that. He did communicate on some encrypted platforms, and some of the people who don't want to destroy all encryption are like, oh, why don't we just get rid of encryption? When you have a warrant, you can go to any company that has encryption, and they have to divulge the contents of the communication. So I'm not sure I understand the problem unless it's a company outside the U.S. that we don't have control of. But if it's a company that encrypts messages within the U.S., they'll accept a warrant, and they should unencrypt the messages, and we should be able to get those. But no, there's nothing really right offhand that I know of that we're missing about motive. It's a little surprising to most people that there wasn't more political discussion, more motivation. The FBI today mentioned that there is a bunch that they have found, like 200 and some odd messages, but they're not positive it's him. But they went ahead and released that today at the hearing. And so I think once we know more for certain with that, I think the amazing thing about this to me, though, is this shooter's picture is taken half dozen times, 90 minutes before, but the last picture taken of him is 6:05. The shooting happens at 6:11. So at 6:05, he's on the ground with a backpack. It's a big backpack, and probably the gun's in it. But they don't locate him. At 6:06, he gets on the roof. But the roof is of 4 different buildings that are connected to each other by roof line. He has to hop up and down 4 or 5 feet at a time, but he's got to make 50 yards on the roof. From where he hops up, where they think he hopped up, he's got to run 50 yards with the gun, lay down and assemble it, and he's just on the roof at 6:06. And then he starts shooting, I think, at 6:11 and 3 seconds. So really he's got 5 minutes to traverse 50 yards on the roof. People are yelling at him, hey, guy on a roof, look, guy on a roof, Police see him at 6:08. I guess they don't see the weapon, but they see him, which means probably at 6:08 he's still carrying the backpack, but he's got to be pretty fast. By the time he lays down at 6:08 or 6:09, he has to assemble the gun, and then, the shots are fired at 6:11, and he's killed 15 seconds later.
What were the snipers, do we know yet? What were the good guy snipers, the counter sniper teams, looking at, if not the nearest roof, which was entirely unsecured?
They are looking in that direction. I think they're warned. For people who say there was no warning, sure there was warning. At 5:41, the Secret Service is notified that there's a suspicious individual with a rangefinder. And to most of us, we think that that's enough warning that they should have taken Trump off the stage. Secret Service is pushing back and saying, well, that's kind of suspicious, but not enough. To me, it's obviously not enough to shoot somebody. You don't shoot somebody with a rangefinder. But somebody with a rangefinder and a big backpack who the local people have been following for 90 minutes, obviously the proceedings should have been stopped, and they should have located him, and they would have gotten him maybe before he got on the roof. But I think they're looking towards his position because they get a message to look at 3 o'clock, and 3 o'clock's on a dial pointed towards where the shooter is. So the ones you see on the roof behind President Trump are looking in the direction of it. They don't know he's a shooter, and they don't know he has a gun. They're being told suspicious individual. The people on the roof behind President Trump also can't see where he's going to shoot from. They're not the ones that shot him. There are trees between him and the snipers on the roof behind President Trump. There are snipers farther. So if President Trump is speaking to the crowd, to Donald Trump's left, there are counter snipers from the Secret Service, maybe another 20 or 30 yards to President Trump's left and above him, either another barn or another high spot. They're the ones that take the shot because they can see him on the other side of the tree. And even with that, you have to realize it's a pretty remarkable shot for them because they have to do it instantaneously. And he's hiding behind about a 5-inch tall aluminum at the apex of the roof. It's not a real steep roof. It's fairly flat. But at the apex, there's a little bit of aluminum siding. He's kind of down below it, but he's got to get his head up a little bit, and he's got to put his gun over the tip. But they do it and take him out with a single shot, which by most people, this is why I don't want to get trapped in the idea that, we're just going to beat up on the Secret Service. I think by and large, they're incredible people. This counter sniper is I don't know his name, but has a long history, apparently one of great marksmanship and of being, a hero.
Yeah. Senator Paul, appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Senator.
Jeff.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks.
That is Senator Rand Paul talking about the testimony, Blockbuster, I would say continued investigation into what's going on there. That's good to hear that they're going to be able to get the actual sniper who ended the shooter's threat. But we need to hear from a lot more people. In the meantime, our friends in the gold and precious metals business use math to make an excellent point. If you'd managed to save $100,000 by 2009, that's just 15 years ago, it would only go as far as 70 grand in buying power today. That's because inflation and out of control federal government spending isn't our friend. In fact, if you'd invested the same amount, $100,000 in gold, it would be worth twice that and then some today. You're the one in charge of how you protect the value of the dollars you've saved. Investing some portion of your savings in gold is one smart way to protect the long-term value of your savings account. Gold's become easy to buy, easy to own. Whether you want it in your savings account, your 401k, your IRA, it's been made easy thanks to Birch Gold. It's who we trust for gold purchases, whether it's your first purchase or your latest purchase. For over 20 years, Birch Gold has helped Americans transition an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. To learn more, get a free info kit by texting my name, Clay, to 989898. Text Clay to 989898 and claim your free, no obligation info kit on gold today.